I'm Christine.
The stunned silence in the kitchen was deafening as I declared, I'm the CEO of Zenith Tech. My father, Mr. Thompson, stood there, his mouth agape, the phone in his hand all but forgotten. My brother, Ethan, looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, and my sister, Lily, was gripping the counter for dear life. Just moments ago, my father had been on the phone with his business partner, Mark, in a panic over a corporate takeover. A company called Zenith Tech had acquired 15 major players in the manufacturing industry, including my father's own firm, Thompson Manufacturing. The family dinner had come to an abrupt halt as we all listened to my father's increasingly desperate conversation. It was a far cry from the earlier barbecue, where my family had gathered around the grill, enjoying the summer evening. Uncle Carl had asked, "So, Kristen, still messing around with those computers?" Before I could answer, my father jumped in. "Oh, she's working for some tech startup. You know how these young people are with their apps." I corrected him, saying, "Actually, I run my own software company." But he didn't seem to hear me. He continued, "Kristen has always been the one who can't seem to make ends meet. Living in that tiny apartment and driving that old Ford. Not like Ethan with his law firm or Lily with her medical practice." Ethan, dressed in a crisp suit, nodded in agreement. "Kristen's always been more of a creative type. They don't usually care about money." Lily added, in that condescending tone she'd perfected in medical school, "Someone has to do the creative work, even if it doesn't pay well." I stood there, holding my soda, wearing jeans and a simple top among their formal attire. I listened as they discussed my financial situation, as if I weren't even there. Aunt Rose asked, "What exactly does your company do?" I explained, "We develop enterprise resource planning software for manufacturing and distribution companies." Their blank stares told me they had no idea what I was talking about. My mother chimed in, "Sounds complicated. Is it a stable job? With benefits and all?" I replied, "It's my company, Mom. I provide the benefits." She smiled patronizingly. "That's nice, dear. Maybe someday you'll be able to afford a proper office instead of working from home." Little did they know, I had a state-of-the-art 20,000 square foot office in the heart of the tech district. The truth was, I deliberately kept my success under wraps. 5 years ago, I'd learned a harsh lesson about wealth. When people found out you had money, they saw you as an opportunity. Friends became investors and family members became self-appointed financial advisors. So when Zenith Tech started making serious money, I decided to live a modest life. I kept my small apartment, drove my reliable Ford, and dressed like any other programmer. I paid myself a reasonable salary and reinvested the rest into growing the company. My family assumed I was struggling, and at first, I found it amusing. But as time went on, their constant comments and helpful advice started to wear me down. Every family gathering was filled with discussions about my lack of direction and suggestions on how I could get my life on track. They had no idea what they were talking about, yet they appointed themselves my financial gurus. 3 months ago, I began exploring acquisition opportunities in the manufacturing sector. My ERP software gave me unique insights into the industry, and I identified several companies that were struggling with outdated systems. Thompson Manufacturing, my father's pride and joy, was at the top of my list. For 28 years, my father had built a mid-sized business that produced specialized parts for the automotive and aerospace industries. He employed 180 people and had an annual revenue of about $35 million. He was always bragging about how he'd built his business the old-fashioned way, through hard work and perseverance. What he didn't know was that the industry was rapidly consolidating. Larger companies were buying up smaller manufacturers to gain economies of scale and technological advantages. Companies like his were either going to be acquired or forced out of business in the next few years. Zenith Tech had the capital and the vision to not only acquire individual companies, but also to control the entire supply chain. We could integrate their operations with our software, eliminate inefficiencies, and create a manufacturing network that would dominate the market. The plan had been in the works for 9 months. We'd already acquired 7 companies in the sector, and we're in a position to buy 13 more, including some of my father's biggest competitors. The final step was to acquire mid-tier companies like Thompson Manufacturing. Once we had enough market share, we could set prices and control the entire automotive component supply chain. My father was completely oblivious to the fact that his industry was about to be transformed and that his underachieving daughter was the one behind it. Last week, my business development team presented the final acquisition targets to me. Thompson Manufacturing was included, along with 15 other companies that would give us a controlling stake in the market. The total acquisition cost was $900 million, but the strategic value was twice that. Once we controlled these companies, we'd have near monopoly power in the automotive component sector. I approved the acquisitions that morning, while my father was out there telling everyone that I was broke. Back in the kitchen, after my revelation, I pulled out my phone and showed them the news article. The headline read, "Zenith Tech completes $900 million manufacturing acquisition spree." There was my picture at the press conference announcing the deals. My father took the phone with trembling hands and read the article. Kristen Thompson, CEO of Zenith Tech, announced the completion of 17 strategic acquisitions that will give the company controlling market share in automotive component manufacturing. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "You're the CEO? But your apartment, your car." I interrupted him. "These are my choices. I prefer to reinvest in the business rather than in luxury." Ethan was the first to find his voice. "How much is your company worth?" I replied calmly. "The acquisitions today were worth $900 million. That's just this quarter's expansion budget. Zenith Tech is valued at around $5 billion, and I own the controlling interest." My father was still in shock. "You bought my industry?" I explained, "I bought the companies that made strategic sense. Your company just happened to be in the target area. You were talking about business expansion, worried about competition, and I knew all along that I was going to acquire the whole market." He asked, "And you didn't say a word?" I retorted, "You never asked what my company did. When I tried to explain my work, you just glazed over. You assumed I was doing small-scale consulting." My mother looked as if she'd seen a ghost. "Kristen, are you saying you're rich?" I said, "I'm saying I'm successful. The money is just a result of building something valuable." The next few hours were a blur. My father called Mark back to tell him that his daughter was the CEO of the company taking over their industry. Mark thought it was a joke at first, then asked if my father could arrange a meeting to discuss better acquisition terms. Ethan immediately switched into business mode, offering to handle the legal aspects of the sale and suggesting we keep it in the family with favorable terms. Lily started asking about investment opportunities in my company. My mother kept walking around the house muttering, "My daughter is a billionaire." The family dynamic changed overnight. Suddenly, my opinions mattered. My modest lifestyle was now seen as smart wealth management, and my decision to be single was considered a focused approach to business growth. My father said, "You could have told us." I asked, "Would it have changed how you treated me?" He hesitated. "Of course not. You're our daughter." But I reminded him, "You spent the whole evening telling everyone I'm a failure, offering me consulting jobs because you thought I was broke, and suggesting I get an MBA to get into real business." 2 weeks later, Thompson Manufacturing received an acquisition offer of $80 million, well above the market value. My father accepted right away, knowing he had no other option. At the signing, he pulled me aside. "Kristen, the offer is more than the company is worth." I replied, "It's exactly what it's worth to my strategic plan. I could have offered less, but you're my father, and I want you to be proud of what you've built." His eyes welled up with tears. "I am proud of you. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what you've achieved." The family relationships slowly mended, but on different terms. They treated me with respect, but I knew it was mostly because of my wealth. I kept my small apartment and old Ford, partly because I genuinely liked them and partly because they were a constant reminder of how my family saw me when they thought I had nothing. My father used the acquisition money to retire early and travel with my mother. Ethan referred some clients to my legal team and started specializing in corporate acquisitions. Lily invested in biotech startups and asked me for business advice. I learned that success isn't just about making money. It's about knowing who truly values you for who you are, not what you own. And sometimes, the family who thought they were advising you actually needed your success for their own future.